They gave my future to my cousin like I was a burden they couldn't wait to dump. I wasn't even told. I found out through a Facebook post. A smiling photo of my cousin Brandon holding the keys to my apartment, captioned, "Thank you, Aunt Carol and Uncle Tom, for believing in me." I stood there frozen, my chest burning, the screen shaking in my hand. That apartment was supposed to be mine, bought with my trust fund that my late grandfather had built from scratch. Before we go deeper, if this kind of story hits you emotionally, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You won't want to miss how this ends. I called my mom in a daze. "Why is Brandon holding the keys to my apartment?" She paused, then laughed awkwardly. "Olivia, honey, you were struggling. You dropped out of college, remember? Brandon had a plan. He needed a fresh start. You didn't even ask about the trust fund for years." Struggling? Yes, I had dropped out. After Dad told me he'd no longer fund my education because writing isn't a real career. I was working 2 jobs and couch surfing. They knew. They watched me fall apart and said nothing. And now they'd handed over my only safety net to someone who mocked my artsy dreams at every family dinner. Brandon, who once told me, "You'll be waiting tables forever?" He now lived in a condo I used to daydream about. I remember visiting it as a teen, back when Grandpa was alive. He used to say, "This will be yours one day, Liv. Keep dreaming big." I kept dreaming. They kept lying. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just said, "Okay." Then I hung up and started planning. For 2 years, I disappeared from the family radar. I cut all ties. I worked 16-hour days, ghostwriting for influencers, editing fiction under pen names, selling short stories to magazines. Slowly, painfully, I built something real, something mine. And just 2 weeks ago, I received an invitation, my cousin Brandon's engagement party. Family reunion style, it said. Come celebrate love, healing, and new beginnings. Healing? From what? Stealing my life? I RSP'd. Yes. And I didn't come empty-handed. The minute I walked into the venue, conversation stopped. Glasses clinked awkwardly. My mother blinked like she'd seen a ghost. My father shifted uncomfortably, trying to act unfazed. Brandon, dressed like he owned the world, raised his champagne and smirked. "Wow, Olivia, you actually came." I smiled politely, like I hadn't been robbed by every person in that room. Wouldn't miss it. After all, it's not every day I get to celebrate someone living in my condo. That one line, it cracked the air like lightning. People glanced around nervously. My mom coughed. "Olivia, let's not—" "No, let's," I said, my voice steady. "Let's talk about the trust Grandpa left me, the one you gave away without telling me. Let's talk about how you made me feel like I didn't matter while I was living out of my car." Brandon tried to laugh it off. "Look, Liv, it's not that deep. You weren't using it. I had a plan." "A plan that required stealing from your own family?" I interrupted. "You mean that kind of plan?" I could feel the tension ripple through the room like heat. My aunt grabbed Brandon's fiancée and whispered something before pulling her away. My dad finally stepped forward. "Olivia, this isn't the time or place." "No," I said coldly. "This is exactly the time and place. You chose to do it in secret. I'm choosing to confront it in public." Then I pulled out the envelope I'd been holding in my clutch. I walked to the center of the room and placed it on the table beside the engagement cake. "This is for you, Brandon. It's a copy of the original trust documents. You'll notice my name was never removed. You were living in that condo illegally, and as of last week, it's been sold." Gasps, whispers. My father's face turned pale. My mom sat down slowly, like her knees had buckled. Brandon opened the envelope and his mouth dropped. "You sold it?" I nodded. and used the money to fund a publishing startup, which, by the way, just signed its first seven-figure author. Silence. The kind that suffocates. Then my mom stood up, her voice trembling. Olivia, we didn't know you'd bounce back like this. Maybe we made a mistake, but we're still family. Can't we talk? I looked her dead in the eye. Now you want to talk? She followed me into the hallway, her heels clicking like guilt across the marble floor. Olivia, please, she whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. You don't understand the pressure we were under. Your dad lost his job. We were drowning. Brandon had just gotten clean. He needed help. We thought, you thought I didn't matter, I cut in. You watched me eat out of vending machines, sleep in my car, and you still smiled in my face like nothing was wrong. You knew Grandpa left that trust for me. It wasn't charity. It was his way of protecting me. You turned it into a lifeline for someone else and let me drown. Her eyes welled with tears, but it wasn't guilt. It was fear. Because now she knew I had power. Real power. The kind that doesn't beg for love anymore. Olivia, she said, her voice trembling. You're successful now. That's amazing. We're proud of you, honestly. But can't we just move past this? As a family? I almost laughed. Move past it? Like you moved past me? I took a slow step forward. You didn't even call to check if I was alive. Behind us, Brandon stormed in, red-faced. You didn't have to ruin the party, Liv. You could have handled this in private. Like you privately stole my future? I shot back. I'm just returning the favor. Publicly. He lunged forward like he wanted to snatch the papers from my hand. I didn't flinch. I leaned in instead and said, Oh, and you might want to start apartment hunting. You've got 14 days to vacate. My lawyer's very punctual. His fiancée had returned just in time to hear it. She blinked, stunned. Wait, Brandon, you told me you bought the place. I tilted my head. Oops. She stared at him, furious, then turned and walked out. Brandon followed, yelling her name. My mother started crying silently. My father just stood still, arms crossed, pride shattered. I looked at both of them and said quietly, You gave away my trust fund. But I built something even stronger. My self-worth. And that, you can't steal. As I turned to leave, my dad finally spoke, almost a whisper. Is there any chance we could be part of your life again? I paused at the door. Maybe, but not as liars, not as thieves. You want a second chance? Start by telling the truth. 2 days later, my inbox was flooded. Emails from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. DMs from people who once rolled their eyes when I talked about writing. We always believed in you, they typed now. Proud of your strength. Hypocrites. Every single one of them had watched me fall and did nothing. But now that I had something they could admire, they wanted to orbit around my light. But the message that stopped me cold came from my father. A simple subject line. Olivia, please read this. Inside was a scanned letter. Handwritten. Not typed. That alone shook me. My father hated writing anything by hand. It read, I don't know how to fix what we did. There's no excuse. Only fear. Fear that we failed as parents. Fear that Brandon's screw-ups were our shame, and helping him was our redemption. But in doing that, we erased you. And that is a regret I will carry for the rest of my life. For a moment I didn't breathe. That letter felt like a crack in a wall that had been too thick for too long. But I wasn't going to let a few lines rewrite years of neglect. So I replied, I appreciate your honesty, but if you want a second chance, it'll come with boundaries. You don't get to jump back in like nothing happened. That same week, I had my first official press interview. The headline, Homeless to CEO, Olivia Carter's publishing empire is just getting started. They asked about my past. I told the truth. No sugarcoating. My family abandoned me when I needed them the most. But maybe that pain is what shaped me. I stopped waiting to be saved and started saving myself. After the article went viral, I got a call from my mother. I let it ring twice before picking up. Olivia, she breathed. I read it. I never knew you were in that much pain. You didn't ask, I replied. She was silent for a while, then softly said, "We want to meet." Not to justify anything, just to listen. Something shifted in me. I wasn't sure if it was forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was the beginning of closure, or power, or both. I said, "One meeting, public place, no expectations." She agreed instantly. And as I hung up, I realized something. This time, I was setting the terms. We met at a small cafe downtown, neutral ground. No home turf advantage, no memory-soaked walls. Just 4 chairs, one table, and years of silence waiting to be shattered. I arrived 10 minutes early. That was intentional. I wanted them to walk in and see me already seated, calm, in control. No longer the daughter begging for approval. When they entered, my mother looked thinner, older. My father looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from shame that's been fermenting for too long. "Olivia," my mom said with a faint, uncertain smile. I nodded. "You're late." We ordered coffee. No one touched it. The air was thick. And finally, my dad spoke first. "We failed you." It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't sugar-coated. He just said it. Blunt, raw, real. My mom nodded slowly, then added, "We didn't just give away your trust fund. We gave away our responsibility. You were hurting, and we looked away because it was easier than admitting we were the cause." I leaned back. Why now? Why the sudden honesty? "Because," she whispered, "we watched that interview. We saw the strength you built on your own. And for the first time, we saw you for who you've always been. Not someone broken, but someone we broke." I didn't speak. I wanted them to sit in that silence, to feel the weight of every ignored phone call, every birthday missed, every lie. My dad reached into his coat and slid a small velvet box across the table. "This was from your grandfather. We found it in the attic. We were too ashamed to give it to you earlier." I opened it slowly. Inside was a delicate gold chain with a tiny quill pendant. There was also a note, yellowed with time, in Grandpa's handwriting. "To Olivia. For the stories the world doesn't know it needs yet. Keep writing. Always." My hands trembled. For a split second, I was 16 again, sitting beside him as he read my first short story, eyes shining with pride. "I'm not saying we deserve forgiveness," my mom said, "but we're asking for a second chance. Not as your parents, but as people trying to do better." I took a deep breath. A second chance doesn't mean full access to my life. It means starting over, slowly, with truth, with accountability. They nodded. My father's voice cracked. "We'll earn it." We sat there for a while longer, not as family, not yet, but maybe as humans finally recognizing each other. When I left, I didn't promise anything. I didn't hug them. I just said, "We'll see." And as I walked back into the world I had built from the ashes they left me in, I realized something beautiful. They gave away my trust fund, but they also gave me the pain that pushed me to become unshakable. I didn't need their second chance. They needed mine. And for the first time in years, I was the one holding the power.